Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unshackled Moms Alliance. So I have Theresa back to talk about her gut health again. Woohoo! So we're going to talk about, so you've been on here before talking about gut health, and today we're going to bring all three pieces together, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that many women experience every single month, their cycle. So before we dive right in, what feels most important for women to understand as we connect all three of these pieces together?
I think the most important thing is that our body's ability to communicate with us is only as good as our body's ability or our ability to understand our body's communication. So if you can learn how to understand what you're being told based on the signals that you're receiving, you can fix or help with a lot of the discomfort and problems that you're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do digestion, the nervous system, and hormones all work together as one system?
Yeah, so much of our nervous system is, or I'm sorry, so much of our hormonal balance, our nervous system health, all of those things are connected to our gut health. When we have challenges and problems in our gut, the signal gets muddied up. It's kind of like I like to refer to as like a radio tower. There's signals that are being sent to um, our organs and our tissues and things like that. And when we have imbalances in our gut, um, it makes it so that those signals get mixed up.
Yeah. So, why does it not work to treat these things separately? Why is it important to treat everything as one?
Yeah, well, it's really important to view the whole body because of how everything is connected. You can't, it would be like looking at the leaf of a tree and saying this tree is dead because this leaf just fell down. There's so much more to it. Is it the soil? Is it something with the root structure? Is there a weevil that's burrowing into the trunk that's causing some issue? There's so much more to it than just the symptom that you're experiencing. So you want to make sure that it's all connected or that you're viewing as a whole instead of individual pieces.
That is such a good analogy. I'm a visual person, and so that visual is like so good. So, how does the gut health directly impact a woman's cycle?
Yeah, so there are a few different ways. Essentially, I always thought that our hormones were created in our ovaries and our brain. And while that's true, there's a significant amount that falls to the gut that people don't necessarily realize. So hormones are made, used, and then processed and then cleared. And the gut is where the decision to sort of remove or recirculate gets made. And when the gut's healthy, the hormones get packaged up and escorted sort of out of the body, but when there's slow motility or slow digestion or inflammation or a gut imbalance, the hormones don't leave cleanly. They actually get reabsorbed and recirculated, and that buildup is when symptoms really start to grow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, why do so many women feel completely different person at different points in the month?
So that's going to be based specifically on which hormones are going through. So you have two main phases of your cycle. You have your follicular phase and then your luteal phase. Now those usually get broken up into four, which is your menstrual cycle, which is part of your follicular. Then you have your ovulation, and then you have your luteal phase. And during the month, I wish I had a presentation to show you. During the month, your hormones, your testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen will rise and fall. So as your estrogen, everything begins to rise. And when you hit ovulation, that's when everything is at its highest. And then it starts to go down. And when it starts to go down, that's when we get tired. That's when we get cranky. That's when we get brain fog. That's when we get cramping and discomfort. Because each one of those hormones has a specific influence within our bodies. And so it's the beginning of the month when we have very low hormone levels, we feel we're dragging. But as we continue to go through and everything rises, especially like once you hit ovulation, that's when you're your most confident, you're feeling your greatest, highest energy, etc.
So, what about those women who are listening that are in perimenopause or menopause? How does gut health affect those women who maybe only have a period once or twice every 6 months or are out and they don't have any more periods?
Yeah, so that's going to be as we hit, the later stages in life, um, your estrogen levels will shift, and that's really the biggest contributor in all of this. Everything else kind of lowers, and your estrogen just kind of becomes the thing. It's actually It's really interesting because when that's the case, our physiology is most closely related to men's. And so that's when things, a lot of women who are in perimenopause or menopause can go into do things like intermittent fasting that works really, really well for men, but it's more challenging for women who are in their fertile window and things like that, because fasting specifically can really impact our hormones in a negative way if you don't do it really, really intentionally. But men can do it and they're like, oh yeah, man, I fasted for 3 days and it was the greatest experience of my whole life. Uh, and when our hormones start to shift and we start moving into peri and menopause, um, our physiology is more closely aligned to the male physiology. So we are able to do things differently like that. It's very interesting.
That is so interesting. So, do you recommend women who are in that phase to begin intermittent fasting?
I think that depends. It's so bio individual. I mean, I could not in good conscience tell every woman to intermittent fast. I know that there are a lot of benefits to fasting in general, but um, it is unique to each person, and you have to be really careful because even when you're in later phases in life, it can still spike your cortisol. So you want to make sure that you're nourishing your body well. If you do decide to fast, I would start with like a 16-hour fast and then make sure that you're eating for those 8 hours. I made the mistake a couple years ago of doing like 18-6 fast, which is you fast for 18 hours and you eat in a 6 hour window. And I actually went up to like there were a couple of days that I did a 24-hour fast. There was one time that I did a 3-day fast, and I literally thought that I was going to die. It was not a good experience. I messed up my hormones. It's actually what got me into a lot of this because I realized like what is going on? Why is this working? Why are all these people having such success with this? But it is relatively consistent in the research that I have seen that women who are going into menopause specifically do benefit from extended fasts in ways that women who are still pre-menopause don't.
That's interesting. So, it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you are, whether you are in the perimenopause, menopause stage, or in the younger years, mood swings are crazy. So, how does our gut health affect our mood swings, and what exactly is happening with those?
Yeah, so mood is going to be there are a lot of factors. It's not just your gut, but that is a significant key because 70 to 90% of the serotonin, which is it's one of our happy chemicals in our brain, is
Yep.
created in the gut. And so if you're having bad signaling, if that radio signal is being broadcast in a way that's not being received, serotonin also helps create, it's like the precursor to melatonin, so it can influence your sleep. And I don't know about you, but I get so crabby when I don't get enough sleep.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and so there's that factor in it. Also, if you have systemic inflammation, if your gut lining is messed up, and we talked about this a little bit in our gut health episode, so go watch that. Um,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
if you're not absorbing the nutrients, if your gut is inflamed, there are things that are going to just make your body feel like it's constantly under attack. And again, the signaling is just not going to happen. And so your mood swings, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, if you're not absorbing, if you're eating great, but you're not absorbing everything, that can cause mood swings as well.
Sure, that makes total sense. So, what does this look like in everyday life for a mom who doesn't even realize what's happening? Like,
Well,
how's it going to show up in like her patience, reactivity, overwhelm, all those kind of pieces?
yeah. How's it going to show up? I mean, it's really I mean, everyone who's had a bad night's sleep and wakes up the next day and they're just snapping at everybody and they're like, man, what's wrong with me? Like it could be hormones, it could be your gut imbalance, it could just be that you didn't get enough sleep. But it is in general, we all are going to have similar experiences with this struggle to, you know, keep keep our chill when our body is not functioning properly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that there's something to like giving yourself grace. I
Oh
think
my gosh.
we are so hard on ourselves because we snapped at our kids or we did
Mhm.
whatever because we're just like feeling so dysregulated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's so important too that in those moments when you do snap, when you go farther than you meant to, that it's okay to come back and be like, hey, listen, I realize that reaction was completely out of line. It's not an excuse, but here's what's going on with me. I'm really sorry. Let's sit down and have a conversation. Like you're maybe you're not an adult, but let's have a conversation like reasonable people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think our kids are so resilient to that. Like they
Mhm.
are just so forgiving and so
Yeah,
loving for the most part, right? When you
yeah,
come in, when you sit down and say, "Hey, look, I was wrong. Please forgive me." I think it just does something to them. It just empowers them in such an amazing way.
right. Well, and to see somebody that you hold in hopefully high regard admit that we don't have it all together all the time. I mean, some of my most like wonderful conversations. I have a 15-year-old. He's a freshman in high school, and he's a whole kid. But some of our most impactful conversations have been when I've come to him and I've been like, "Hey, listen, I'm a human too. Like, I'm so sorry that this is how I reacted. I really am working on it. I'm okay if you maybe not in the moment, but you can call me out on it. To let them, I mean, just to see how healthy communication can happen coming from a parent to their child is
Hmm.
it just raises them up on a platform that isn't really possible otherwise.
Yeah, I think that that is so true. And I think that, like, I'm seeing my kids are in their early 20s, and I'm seeing that that affect them in their like boss situation and different things that happen. They don't see like it's this big, power dynamic. They see
Mhm.
it as like somebody I can go to and say, okay, you know what, I really can't do this at work, or I really am struggling with this.
Yeah,
Let's sit down and talk about this. And it blows a lot of the people that they work for out of the water, because they're just like, we don't have very many employees who feel like they can come and just talk to us like this. And so I think it's just modeling that behavior just makes such a huge effect on your kids,
absolutely. Yeah,
not only now, but in the future.
yeah.
Okay, so how does stress and your nervous system dysregulation make everything worse?
uh, Stress is one of the most challenging issues that we as humanity face because you can't do anything about it. I mean, there are some things that you can do. You can learn to regulate your nervous system. You can learn to bring yourself back down to, like, out of sympathetic and into your parasympathetic nervous system, out of fight and flight and into rest and digest. You can learn how to do that. But stress is going to be there. It's never going to go away. And the lifestyle that we live with, the LED lights that flicker and cause stress on our bodies, and the diets that we eat that have inflammatory processes that cause stress inside of our bodies, like, there is no escaping it. All that we can do is learn how to function in and around it. But it is so frustrating because if you're in a high stress situation, in a high stress environment, all of your bodily systems are going to react negatively to that. And so if you don't learn how to fix that, you're going to have lack of sleep. You're going to have bad, mood swings. Like, no matter what you do, you can be eating super well, but if you're in a stressful situation, you can exercise every single day. But if you're in a stressful environment that you cannot escape, your body is going to have problems and challenges. And it is. If we could all just live with sunshine and rainbows and puppies and all of the things, everything would be great.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes,
But then, iron sharpens iron and we wouldn't grow.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, we have to have some hard times to appreciate the good.
Yeah, true, true. But I think that, it does so many things on a cellular level when you're under
Yes,
high stress for long periods of time.
absolutely. Yeah, I
And
mean, just
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just being stressed, just having consistent stress on a regular basis can cause the tight junctures in your intestines to open up. Like, just being under stress. And that is like the catalyst that breaks everything else. And it's like, why? Oh, I mean, we are perfectly made. We are wonderfully made. There's no question about that. But the environment that we find ourselves in right now makes it hard to really, like, appreciate that, I think.
Yeah. So, what do you say to the mom who has a 15-year-old teenager at home that has decided that, I don't really like you anymore as mom, and so I'm just going to move on? And then, financial stuff is tight,
Mm,
and maybe their partner or whatever is just struggling, with
mm.
different things, and so there's constant combat. So they're not sure how they're going to pay their bills. Their kids hate them, and so, like, I am living with this stress every day. So what kind of things can you suggest to that mom?
Um, I mean, for one, we'll take each piece. Your kid, your 15-year-old hates you, thinks that you're the worst person in the world, thinks that you're strict, thinks you're rude, thinks you're mean. Um, I mean, I think that that's just a part of life, and that doesn't make it any easier, but giving them grace and letting them know, you know what, maybe you feel that way. I love you anyway. I'm still here for you. I'm not going anywhere. And even with all of this, I still feel wonderfully towards you. Um, Communication is so important, and that's hard to do when your kid doesn't want to communicate. But as a parent, um, modeling grace, modeling forgiveness, um, and modeling just trying to be as peaceful as possible is I don't know if that'll help that, but you have to keep yourself in order. So if your whole world is falling apart around you, whether depending on your belief system. For me, it's prayer. Like everything's falling apart. Hey, it's better than it was for Job. I still have my kids. The house there, it could be worse. I'm not carrying a cross to the top of a hill. There are things that it could be worse. And so it's finding, no matter what's going on around me, finding the peace within myself through prayer, through meditation, through journaling, breathing. 60 seconds of deep belly breaths with an exhale longer than your inhale. It's not going to fix anything. It's not going to pay your bills, but if you can keep yourself calm and steady, even through the storm, if you can find a way to spin positives, it will help at least a little bit. It's not going to answer all of your questions. It's not going to make life easier, but it's really, it's when you're on an airplane, you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help somebody else. So your partner might be struggling. I want to help you. I want to be here for you. I have to fix this, and then we can have a conversation. And also making sure that you're not having conversations when you're both in a heightened emotional state. Hey, let's take 5 minutes. Maybe let's breathe. let's drink some water. Let's eat some vegetables. And then come back to the conversation. And just so it's a hard one, especially with the way that the world is right now. There's a lot of that going around, a lot of people who just don't know what to do. And no, taking a deep breath and eating some broccoli is not going to fix all of it, but it will put you one step ahead of people who aren't doing those things.
Yep. So, what do you tell those moms who have blank page syndrome, right? So you say journal, which will help, but as soon as they open them, like, I don't even know what to write. What are some things, like maybe some prompts or something that you can do ahead of time so you can kind of get ready? Or what do you recommend for moms who struggle with journaling? Because it can be such a healthy tool.
Yeah. I guess, I have had that experience a number of times. I've never been one to use prompts because I don't want to be put in a box. That prompt looks stupid today. I don't want to answer that question. I am a big fan of stream of consciousness journaling. And I cannot tell you how many pages in my journal start with, this is stupid. I don't have anything to say.
Yeah.
I just don't. But what I've found is that as I'm writing about how stupid something is, or how, or I'll even just start writing, well, this morning the sun is shining. This morning I ate eggs for breakfast. I'm drinking a cup of water. And as you just put the pen to paper or type it in if you're a computer journaler, as you start, eventually something will come up. And I'm also a big, I'll pray before I journal. I'll say, okay, hey, if you have any revelations for me, I'd love to hear it. What's talk to me. Or, there have been a couple of times where I've opened my Bible to a random verse and just poked at a page. And I said, okay, that's weird, but I'll write it out. And then if that sparks something, I'll continue from there. If it doesn't, then again, this is stupid. I don't know what I'm writing about. But eventually, almost always, something will come up. So I guess I don't have any prompts, but just stream of consciousness, write about how stupid you think it is.
Yeah, I love that. That is so good, because I think that is, when I talk about journaling in my groups, that is the number one thing that moms say, I don't know what to write.
Right.
Like I see that blank page and I'm like, I freeze. I'm like, why am I sitting here? Right.
Listen, Mama, I know you have thoughts in that head.
Yeah. I'm going to go say, this is stupid. keep and like just keep, journal your feelings. Or
Hmm.
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you walk us through the cycle of stress, gut, hormones, mood, more stress?
I feel like I mean, a cycle is a very generous way to put that. I feel like a more appropriate way to look at it would be a big bowl of spaghetti where everything is intermixed and intertwined, because there's not one thing that leads to another that leads to another. It's like they all have their space. Your stress level is going to impact your hormones. Your hormones are going to impact your gut health. Your gut health is going to impact your hormones. Your gut health is also going to impact your stress level. Because like for me, I struggle with gut issues. I mean, so I'm missing 3 molars, and so it's hard for me to chew my food. And if you don't chew your food properly, your gut goes crazy. And so it's this. I have low grade stomach inflammation at all times just because of that. If I'm not chewing until my jaw hurts, essentially. And
Yeah,
so each one of them connects to the other. So there's really no cycle. It's just that it's more that they all support each other or they all hinder each other.
I love that. That is such a good visual. Spaghetti. It's like one hot, twisted up mess.
Yeah. You got a meatball over here. You got, yeah.
Okay, so I know that everybody has listened to all 3 episodes, and if you haven't, look it up because you need to. Um, Now they're thinking, okay, great. I have this information. Now what? Where should she start?
Awareness. For me, if you're looking at hormones in specific, now we've got nervous system, we've got gut health. I think that I gave some pretty good tips in both of those episodes. Again, check them out. They were great. They were fun. It was a great conversation. Hormones in specific. The thing that honestly changed my whole life was tracking my cycle. Um, because once I started doing that, when I was younger, I would think that the world was ending. I would be like, everything's falling apart and I'm sad and I don't know what's going on and everything sucks and I'm dying. And then I would start my period 3 days later and it was like, oh, yeah, no, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And once I started tracking, if I start getting acne or if I start having an emotional dip or something, all that I have to do is look at where I'm at in my cycle. And I'm like, oh, yeah, my hormones are going crazy right now. Of course that I am. And in just that awareness, I have learned so much about how my body feels during each phase of my cycle. When I go to the gym, I literally can feel my luteal phase coming on. Like I'll go and I'll pick up a 15-pound dumbbell and I'll do like a bicep curl. And then the next day I'll pick up that same 15-pound dumbbell and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Oh yeah, I'm starting my luteal phase. That tracks. And then, so it's once you know where you are and it where knowing where you are is really important, knowing how that affects you and what it means, what hormones are raising, what hormones are dropping. um, that is the single most important thing, I think, when it comes to hormones, is learning where you are in your cycle.
So, talking about being a teenager and cycles and those kind of
Hmm.
things, let's talk a little bit about that. So it seems like girls are starting their cycles a lot earlier. Like I'm
Yeah.
hearing 8, 9, 10, which when
Yeah.
I was growing up was not unheard of, but unheard of. Why do you think that is? And how can we prepare our girls for that?
Yeah, there's really no single cause. There are trends documented in research. We are seeing, early onset across the board. But again, it's not just based on hormones. It's a lot of other things. It's metabolic health. Our diets have some factor in that. The way that we're metabolizing the foods that we're eating. More fat creates more estrogen. Higher estrogen makes you start your cycle sooner, essentially. Also, things like chronic stress. Kids are. I mean, I don't. I think you said your kids are a little bit older, but I've got an elementary schooler who has more stress than some of the adults that I know because of their
Yeah.
school load and the expectation that's placed on them. And then environmental exposures. So we've got things like endocrine disruptors, the plastics in our water bottles and things like that, which is why I recommend glass, or I see you drinking out of a stainless steel water bottle over there. Things, personal care products, the fragrances in our home and our beauty products. all of those things, we're essentially swimming in all of this extra gunk that didn't used to be here, which is raising the dates, or not the dates, the ages, or I'm sorry, lowering the ages that girls are having these happen.
So how can I prepare? So I have my 8-year-old, 9-year-old who still kind of likes Barbies and likes babies, but now I have to discuss with them periods. How can I? What kind of things can I do to prepare her for that? And even it doesn't matter whether it's 8 years old, whether it's 12, 13. Like kind of is
Sure.
still same discussions.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to take away like the embarrassment from it, take away the secrecy. When I was raised, it was like we don't talk about our period. It was an embarrassing thing that just happened to me once a month. I didn't understand even really what was happening. I was raised by my dad, so it was kind of like I hid it from him for as long as I could because I didn't want to talk to my dad about this, right? But um, for I've got friends who have daughters who are right around this age, and I think that they hear their mom talking about their experience. It's no longer this hidden thing. It's not a secret. We're not using code names. We're talking about our uteruses. We're talking about we're talking about our period and tampon, like making those words not some weird faux pas. And then this is hard because it can be a challenging time of the month for for people, especially if you have, if you're heavy flow or you're experiencing cramping and things like that. But to try not to make it negative. It's like, yes, this is uncomfortable. Yes, this is inconvenient. But what it's truly showing me, I mean, your menstrual, like your period is essentially the report card for how your body has been for the rest of the month. If you have really, really heavy periods, you've got clots that are, if you have really heavy periods and lots of heavy cramping, that tells you that there's something that happened during the earlier part of that month that messed with your hormones enough, whether it was your gut, whether it was your stress, whether it was your diet, whatever it was, that is making this week more uncomfortable and more challenging. And when we go at it like, ugh, this is inconvenient and I hate it, you take away, it's like I said earlier, you take away your ability to understand the language that your body is speaking to you in. It's like a baby. A baby can only cry. And you can think that the crying is annoying, but it's a signal. It's saying, hey, I need something. I need my diaper changed. I need my teeth hurt. I need, I'm hungry. Your body cries to you in ways that you can only understand once you start paying attention to it. And if we teach our girls to ignore the pain, to ignore or to resent this thing that's happening to us, we are doing them a huge disservice because as they get older, instead of learning how to work with that, it's like shove it down, pretend like it doesn't exist, and then you end up with PCOS and endometriosis and all of the things that are really challenging because you never gave yourself a chance to understand what your body was doing and the beauty of what that was.
Wow, that was so much great information that I had never thought about. So let's back up just a little bit. So if you have heavy clotting, that is a cry for your body for something that
Mhm.
happened earlier in your cycle.
Yes. So when those radio signals, right? So when estrogen rises, it thickens the uterine lining. So when
Hmm.
you have too much estrogen, your uterine lining gets thicker, and then you also have progesterone, which is what actually causes the lining to shed. Now, progesterone causes cramps, and if your estrogen is too high, the progesterone has to rise to meet it. But sometimes it's very muddly. But essentially, higher estrogen means way heavier flow, and progesterone means way harder cramps. It can also cause constipation, it can cause diarrhea, it can cause all sorts of other issues. Progesterone controls smooth muscles. And so it's if you eat a lot of processed food or a lot of sugar or if you eat not enough. I mean, a lot of people aren't eating enough. The fiber is so important because fiber actually takes the estrogen and your estrogen is packaged up and removed from your body, and fiber is the mechanism that removes it, one of the mechanisms that remove it. So if you're not getting enough fiber, that raises the probability that your estrogen is going to raise. And again, if you don't have, like if you have constipation issues, it is going to, if if your fecal matter stays in your bowels for too long, it will take the packaged estrogen and send it back into your system. And then you have floating around estrogen, and then your estrogen levels are really high, which creates the thicker uterine lining, which makes heavier periods. That was a lot, but yes.
No, that was amazingly interesting. I don't think most women know that.
No, it's so when you really start to learn this stuff, it is fascinating. And it's so, I mean, half the population of the world deals with this every single month for the majority of their lives. And the training that we got, I mean, I started learning about this 4 years ago. Like I learned a little bit, right? But like it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I started tracking. And again, it changed everything because there's so much about the phases of our cycle that you can do. You can eat certain things, you can avoid certain things, you can make sure that you get more rest, and all of those things will allow you to have a smoother cycle, less cramps, lower, less heavy flow.
So actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but so when you're in the perimenopausal phase and where maybe you have like 2 or 3 cycles a year, but you still have such an increase in estrogen, is it as important to have fiber as, I mean, always, we'll just say that, right? It's always important to have fiber. But what is fiber doing when you're in those phases of life? Is it still doing that flush? That's what's important, or um, tell me a little bit more about
Yeah, so I mean, fiber is there's a whole big craze on protein right now. Everyone is saying eat your protein. I don't disagree with that, but I think that fiber is more important because if you're not getting fiber, you don't have as much bulk to your stools. You don't have as much gut motility. So you're not able to release your poop is toxins, right? Like it's literally like the everything that your body is trying to get rid of. And if you don't have enough fiber to have consistent bowel movements, you are leaving toxins in your bowels for until they come out. And fiber is a huge factor in that. And one of the things again is estrogen. So it does not matter what phase of your life you're in, women, men, kids, everyone has estrogen. We all have hormones, right? If the estrogen stays in your system for too long, it gets unpackaged and sent back into your system, and it will cause problems for everybody. It can cause weight gain, um, men who alcohol has estrogen causing things in it. So, you see like men who have like larger midsections and things like that. A lot of the times that can be not necessarily alcohol related. It can be an estrogen dominance. It is very, and it's again, fiber is so important. If there were three things that I can encourage people to do, it would be drink lots of water, eat lots of fiber, and sleep a lot. Maybe not a
that.
lot, but you
Two out
are.
of three is consistent. I don't know how many. Well, if you have teenagers in the home or even elementary school kids, you're constantly going to sports to and from. You're doing
Yeah,
all the things, which I know you're living that life right now. But
absolutely. Well, and if you can't sleep, at least find time to regulate your nervous system, breathe, find it
yeah,
just a couple of minutes every day to just bring yourself down. If you can't sleep, I understand.
yeah, yeah, I like that. Okay, so um, final question: if women could walk away from this entire series, all three, right, understanding one thing about their body, what would it be?
Everything that happens in your body is happening because that's how it was made. Everything. We have systems in place to remove and to support, and your body wants to heal. Homeostasis, your body, if given the right environment, will heal itself. Um, and there is nothing, even something as terrible as cancer, is your body's way of protecting itself from whatever it was exposed to. So every single thing that your body does, whether it's inconvenient, whether it's frustrating, whether it's painful, is intended to help you and benefit you. And from your nervous system to your gut to your hormones, and everything in between and everything outside of that. When you learn to speak that language and understand what it's telling you, you can fix it without fail.
I love that. So much important information today. I mean, all three have been so good, and I just really appreciate you coming in to see us. And I hope that you'll come back.
I would love to.
Thanks for visiting.
Thank you, Lisa. See you later.